Hello and welcome to day 6 of our adventure in prayer. So today we're going to be looking at creative prayer. Now it's a huge subject and it would take me about 3 days to give you all the ideas I have. So I'm not going to do that. I'll give you a few though to start you off that you might want to try. But for most of this session I'm simply going to give you an idea of what the term creative prayer means and why it might be helpful. And if you made it through yesterday's marathon session on praying with our bodies, you might be pleased to hear that this is going to be a much shorter session. Now, many people who've been to theological college may find their toes curling when they hear the very phrase creative prayer. In my years at Cuddesdon, we used to have worship times that we called creative worship, and students had to lead them. They so often involved the same objects that one friend dubbed them 101 uses for pebbles and a tea light. Others thought that it was nothing more than preparing for leading Sunday school, and it wasn't something that was fit to be offered to grown adults. But it doesn't have to be like that. Firstly, I want to make the point that if a prayer activity is good enough to be offered to children, then it's more than good enough to be offered to adults. Children are, in my opinion, much better at prayer than most adults. They don't have the hang-ups that we have, and they're more likely to simply let themselves go. They don't worry about feeling silly or getting things wrong as much as we do. They just go for it. And to be honest, we could learn a lot by praying with children. Secondly, as we've said a few times during this course, we all find different things helpful. We are different, and different things work for different people. Some people are very word focused, some are more drawn to images. Some people like formality and some like things to be a bit less surrounded by boundaries. We are created uniquely, and so prayer is never going to be a one-size-fits-all thing. Also remember that we are created in God's image. And if there's one thing that we know that God is, it's creative. So it's not surprising really that some of us find that we too are creative, and connecting with our Creator God in a creative way makes sense. And the ways that we can express this creativity are endless. Very much like yesterday's prayers, when we're praying creatively, we are engaging another part of ourselves with the prayer. So if your mind wanders while you pray, this could be another way of helping you to get into that focused place. So let's have a few examples. As we talked about during our session on Ignatian prayer, it's important first to take the time to dedicate creative prayer, to remind yourself why you're there, why you're doing this, and to ask the Holy Spirit to guide you in that activity. And again, looking at how you feel during the activity as you go along is also important. Pull yourself back if you feel that something you're doing is taking you further away from God instead of closer into His presence. So, if you want to, for example, pray about the world, why not look at a map? See where your eye leads you to on that map and pray for that place. You might even find that a large map that you can lay out on a table or on the floor and put pins in, or maybe even put a candle onto the places that you're praying for, is helpful there. Or maybe an outline map that you can colour in as you pray. If you want to pray for people, and you often sort of go through that list in your head and you find You're not sure who you've already prayed for, and you're worried that you're going to forget somebody, and then you come to the end of the prayer and you suddenly remember that Auntie Doris is going in for a chilblain operation tomorrow and you really should have prayed for her, then why not use your phone or your address book? Simply choose a letter of the alphabet, go into your contacts, and then pray for every name under that letter. And then do that as many times as your prayer time will allow you to. Then you can be sure that you're not going to miss anyone out in that list. And it keeps you focused and maybe even prompts you to pray for people that you haven't been in contact with for a while and had forgotten. Another one for your phone, if you use social media, so maybe Facebook or Twitter, and you've got those apps on your phone, open them up and then just scroll through and pray for the people and situations that you find there. That's something that I often do through morning prayer, and I find that my prayer goes off into different directions prompted by the things that I'm reading on social media. So how about something with your hands, maybe clay or plasticine? Make a representation of something you want to pray for, or maybe just let your hands guide you into making something, see what turns up. You might find that while you're shaping and sculpting and making some form, that different details come out to you. It might be the Holy Spirit guiding your prayer, or simply something that deep down you realise you need to pray for. When I was on retreat once, I took a piece of clay and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I've never actually been very good at making things with clay, so I'm not quite sure why I started doing it. But I ended up finding that I was making an angel out of this clay, and the hands of this angel seemed really prominent, and it started me off on a thing praying for hands and for healing, and took me in a whole direction that I hadn't realised consciously that I needed to pray about, but I absolutely did. It was a wonderful experience that I just wasn't expecting. So whether it's something deep in your conscience that's telling you need to pray for it, or whether it's the Holy Spirit guiding you, either way it could lead to something absolutely wonderful. I mentioned colouring earlier when I was talking about praying for the world. Maybe colouring or doodling around a Bible verse or psalm. You can actually buy journaling Bibles now that have space for colouring and doodling and doing all that sort of thing, so that you can pray around a Bible phrase or passage and do something with your hands at the same time. Or how about making something? I mentioned yesterday when we were talking about Anglican prayer beads that when I make prayer beads, I'll pray as I'm making them, and I prefer to make them for order and people who've asked me for them, so that I can pray for that particular person as I'm making the beads. I also like to paint glass and make cards for people, and I pour prayer into that as I'm doing that too, and it can take me in all sorts of directions. And because I'm doing something with my hands, as I explained with the prayer beads, the reason that works for me is that the physical part of my body is occupied, and it helps me to get mentally into that space. So you can offer all of these processes as prayer, and it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then if it's a gift for somebody, you can hand that over knowing that you're giving them something that you've prayed deeply into, and it does make it feel like such a special thing to be handing them. I know people like to prayer knit as well, and that often ends up as blankets for loved ones, or especially new babies that people like to knit for as they've got friends or family who are expecting new babies, and that's just gorgeous, something that will go with them, and you've dedicated prayer time to that person. So the list is, without any type of exaggeration, absolutely endless. The important thing is to find some creative activity that gels with you and that you can have fun doing, and that you don't have to think about too deeply as you're doing it, and you can just let it happen as you're allowing it to open your mind in prayer. So just let your imagination run wild, even if it involves tea lights and pebbles. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about the daily office, so the prayers that are set out that we say every day. Clergy promise to pray the daily office every day, and lots of other people do. So if it's something you've never come across before, then please tune into that. Even if you have, you might find out a couple of things you didn't know, and we can pray the daily office together. So I'll see you tomorrow. In the meantime, God bless.
During this difficult time when our church buildings are closed, we're still a church, meeting virtually for prayer services and fellowship, loving our neighbours by offering practical support to the vulnerable and caring for our communities. The work of our church is reliant on people's generosity. If you're able to give more at this time, here's how you can help.